when you have a kicker like Chad, who he made 4 field goals and it was a big part of the offense, but obviously missed a couple, like, how do you approach a game like that in terms of, like, looking at it? I mean, obviously you guys are going to want to fix whatever's wrong, but, like, is that a tough game for them? Is that a regular game? We've talked about this before, about, like, you can't be expecting kickers to make 100% of their kicks because it's probably not realistic.
Yeah, it's always the goal. Obviously, put guys out there, score points, and it's disappointing time that doesn't happen for whatever reason it is, right? Operation, protection, kicker, whatever. And, you know, it did start off well. You know, I think both of those early ones were 50 and an extra point, and one kind of close. And then the one right before the half, it's, 6 inches from going the other way. It hits the upright and then missed. The next one came back and hit one in the fourth quarter. So, there's some positives and negatives. In terms of the result stuff, try not to focus too much on results and being consistent in terms of, like, technique, process, and just reps through practice. I mean, I thought last Thursday is one of his better days, striking the ball. But, on game day, we got to be able to make those kicks, and we got to be good around him as well. We got to be good as far as snaps got to be consistent, the holds got to be consistent, protection's got to be consistent, because any of those variables are off. Obviously it's a reflection. Most people, it's like quarterback win percentage, and things like that. Like, there's 11 guys in that field, and I got to coach them better.
What is the process of, like, identifying what's going wrong mechanically in terms of the kicks? Like, how do you go about that?
One of the guys are different, and everybody's got their way of doing things individually. Most of the guys that I've been around kind of know when they were hitting their best balls, and maybe it was OTAs, maybe it was 3 years ago, maybe it was 2 days ago, and you kind of rewatch some of those things, and it's like, oh man, I just noticed I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I learned that almost 30 years ago when Phil Dawson was kicking at Texas. My dad was coaching him, and that was back in the day where they had the substitute teacher VHS cart, and the TV here and the TV here, and they're literally playing, a kick from, the spring where he felt like that was his good day, and like here's where, and you're just watching it side by side. Technology is obviously a little better now, and guys can swipe through the iPads, set it to end zone view, things like that. But there's an ideal way that guys take their steps, point their hips, swing their leg, the timing parts of it, and for each guy it's different. But just trying to get back to the ones where you feel like that's who I am, that's who I want to be, that's what it needs to look like. So, and that's from my standpoint. I've always asked feedback from those guys. Because, again, every kicker's different, every punter's different, whatever their swing is, whatever their timing and stuff is, but, like, what makes you the best? And that's what I want to be watching during practice. So, if there is feedback to give, I can give it instantly.
Last week you brought in Chad's Holder from Eastern Michigan. Was that to kind of help him out at all?
For years and years and years, teams that played left-footed punters would bring in left-footed punters to work out the week before. Last week we were playing a right-footed punter. Chad's Holder happened to be a right-footed punter. We were working the player out that had nothing to do with the holding.
With Chad, he's been pretty step forward, like talking about when he's asked about it, where he is, and being kind of self-aware and taking accountability. As a coach, do you want to see that? Do you need to see that in terms of kind of where they are mentally when they're, I don't know, being straightforward out in public? I mean, I'm sure you're talking to him behind the scenes too, but does that help you at all in confidence of where he is mentally, if he's willing to kind of be in that space?
To be honest with you, that's new information for me because I literally haven't read or like watched anything in months. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, Chad is a pro. He knows what the job description is. He knows what comes along with it. He's an accountable guy. I know he works hard. I see him work hard. Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a player that does something good or bad, you guys all got jobs to do. I respect that. That's why I'm sitting here right now. But those guys are pros, and they want to do it the right way.
What did you see out of Sims stepping in?
Yeah, I had a couple of returns. I thought they were trying to kick away from a little bit. During the game, we didn't have any punt return opportunities. Handled the ball decent. His tracks were okay. Anytime you get in the first game you played in a while and it's fast, maybe you don't see things quite as fast as you had in the past. That kickoff is different than what he's been doing growing up, right? Like he had some kickoffs last year, but it's been a minute's live game action. But he's an impressive guy. He's he knows that's his ticket, right? Like being a returner is what he has done the best over the course of his career. So the questions he asks in terms of like preparation or, what do I do in this situation? How do you see this happening? They're good questions. And Dortch asks those questions as well. That kind of has been his background coming up. But sometimes as you get, guys who are kind of newer to the job description, they don't even know what not to ask or what to ask. So that's kind of what jumped out with him.
How does it feel to coach the oldest player in NFL history to have a block field goal and block punt or block extra point in the same season?
You guys are full of new information today. I was really happy for Calais. The more he gets, the better we are. So keep putting him out there and try and put him in positions to be successful.
How impressive or incredible is that he's still doing this at 38 years old?
It's very impressive. Yeah, I mean, we talked at length about his length and size and the things that he brings to the table, but there was a teachable moment on the previous one and kind of how we want to do certain things. And, I mentioned Dante Stills last week on that. This week it was B.J. Ojulari, kind of the combination of those two guys. So, you kind of have teach tape for years and years, and it was good to see it apply the very next week.
How have you just kind of handled all the injuries on your side of the ball, especially with the two new ones and then Sweat going down the other day, just kind of as a whole this season with so many guys in there?
I think there's a lot of things that you have to do in my position, and number one is be there for those guys. They're down, and I tell them all the time, name it, man. It sucks. It sucks to be hurt. It's really hard. It's hard mentally and physically. And then help them, recognize that attack what you can, control. Take it one day at a time. Don't get too up about I'm progressing. Don't get too down if you're having a little bit of a bad day, because that kind of generally happens on your return to play. So, to me, that's a very important thing. And then from a, perspective of, getting ready for the next game without certain people, I mean, that's our job as coaches, and to me, it's opportunities for other guys to go out there and do some things and show what they have. And so you always got to have that mentality as a coach of, whoever's available for this game, we got to figure out a plan that can allow us to go win the game.
Despite all those injuries, down to 26 points from 40 the week before, what would you think you guys did better on defense this week?
What came to my mind right now is what could we have done better? Let me start with that. I felt like at times we did really good in the run game, a version on offense that I think can run the ball very well. But then it needs to be more consistent all the time. And then I thought there was situations for us to, end possessions and get off on third, fourth down, where we could just execute at a higher level and to do that, and you'll end up keeping the score down a little bit more. What I thought they did good is those splashes in the run game that, created TFLs or negatives I thought were really good. I thought we kept the explosive passes very low. And I thought some guys went in there and tackled really well. I thought we did a good job at the point of attack and coverage. I think of like Will had a handful of them, Denzel had a handful of them, and then Jane Davis came in and did a really good job. So really that's one of those guys where you're excited for them to get their opportunity. And I thought as a whole, like the pocket at times was pretty muddy for Kirk, and there's times where that pocket is collapsing, and that kind of led to some rush throws where we were maybe a little bit in a zone where he could have checked it down. And that crew last week, if you check it down, they got guys that was some juice that can make things happen. So to be able to create those kind of rush throws, or even the one that Denzel's pick kind of wasn't a clean pocket to step up in, that was good to see.
With Walt, just in totality of the season, what stood out? What did you like?
Yeah, he's a disruptive player, and that's what you need up front. You need guys that can be violent in the run game and create knockback and win one-on-ones, and I think he showed that. And then he affects the quarterback on pass situations, whether it's a known pass or transitioning from a normal down call. I know it's been a hard season for him. So I do appreciate his mindset, his resiliency. He was never too down. Always showed up to work, and played with high motor.
Where do you think he improved the most?
I would say it's his run game technique. He overall kind of came in with a lot that he could. It was almost kind of like molding some clay, and he picked up on things really, really fast. And it was never like he made the same mistake twice. So his ability to pick up on those motor skills was impressive. Going back to OTAs and, early on, it was like, oh man, like that didn't take long. So I think he made big strides there.
JG described him as he said, we already know we have like a blue chip player in Walt. Well, what does it do for the defense going forward to know that you kind of have that difference maker in the middle?
It takes good players to be good, and like it's up front. I know like across the league, it starts up front, and I believe that too. You got to have good offensive line, good defensive line, in order to control the line of scrimmage and affect the quarterback or protect the quarterback. But don't get it twisted. Like you need 11 good players out there. You need people playing at a really high level. Like there's not a position out there that's like, that's all right. Like, oh yeah, we don't like I could go play that spot. No. It takes 11 guys like every snap, and it really takes more than 11 because of the roles, packages, all these different spots. So like, having a really good player is important at any position. And the more you can have of those guys, and the more you can turn guys into, oh, he's a good player, into, oh, this guy's an impact player, the better you're going to be as a team.
What's it going to take to maybe not stop, but at least slow down Cincinnati's passing attack?
It takes a handful of things. It takes you got to scheme it the right way, because they have two elite receivers and an elite quarterback. So you can't just constantly give them what they're looking for. They do a really good job of, moving pieces around and finding ways to get, both those guys the ball in creative ways. But you also have to win some hard downs, and so guys got to go out there and cover. You can't sit there and take away one or two guys the entire game. Otherwise, it just opens up so many other things. So it's a combination of that. You see those guys like, I don't think I've ever seen so much double-double, which is, just doubling two guys on a tape as I had seen Cincinnati's offense. But, like, there's going to be times where you're not, taking away, dedicating two to a single guy, and you got to go win those downs.
Does it remind you of the Cowboys tape at all in that way?
It's a different offense, but
Because I remember you saying similar things with Dak.
Yeah, you'll see some similarities. Like in the off season, we talked about hey, what do we want to have kind of in our toolbox, and some of that discussion around different coverage variation is what do you do when you play a team that has 2 ones, and so you definitely there's similarities within a different offense. There's similarities in terms of matchups, right, and having to take away 2 high-level receivers.
Chase Brown's also on the roster. What are you seeing from him?
Yeah, can tote the rock. I think one thing that stood out that I'm impressed with is him in protections, just his ability to pick up blitzes, and then when he finds it, like I think he's elite at picking them up, and he goes and meet people. He goes and meet blitzers in the hole. So impressed with him with the ball in his hands. Impressed with him, in the pass game, being able to catch and run, and he runs hard. He's explosive and he runs hard. So pretty overall weaponized offense, you could say. Did I just make that? Did I make that up? Is that a real word? Weaponized? Yeah, I'm good. Mark, I'm good. I'm good. That took a lot of courage by me. I mean, to just throw a word out there that you have no idea if that's a real term with a mic in front of your face. Give me some credit on that one. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, I could just be embarrassing myself up here.
You mentioned a few minutes ago, kind of it starts in your mind up front. How do you assess or evaluate the defensive line's production throughout this season overall?
I think you got to look at it in terms of run and pass game. I can just similar to last week, what I was saying about, just being consistent in the run game. Like when I feel like we're on point in the run game, I see everybody that plays, we usually have 6 up on game day. I see all those guys playing with great technique and changing the math up front. And that's what it takes, but you got to do it all the time. So, just continuing to strive for that consistency up front. And then, again, with the pass rush, you got to kind of look at it individually. Not everyone has the same role in terms of pass rush. So, you got to kind of look at that and, this guy maybe rushes a little bit more on normal downs versus person on third downs. How do they do when they get one-on-ones? How do they do when they get the slide? So there's variables to that in terms of evaluating that. I always think that there's good things, but there's always things to improve on.
D-Rob hasn't always ended up in the box score, but he did in this game. Was there something where he elevated? Has he been elevating his game recently? What have you seen?
I saw confidence with just playing fast and violent. Like there's no time to think up front. And so as soon as those techniques become second nature to him, which is what I felt like I saw with him, just comfortable and playing fast and violent, he showed up big time for us. I think he had a really good game. And so that's as the more comfortable he gets and the faster he plays, the more violent he can play, he utilizes his skill set, and it's just going to continue to get better.
With your rookie corners, when they are one-on-one against, Jason and T. Higgins, how beneficial is that? With 2 games to go and you're obviously eliminated, but how beneficial is that to their future, just getting those kind of reps?
Yeah, I think whoever's out there, rookies or second year, it doesn't matter. Be able to go up against the best in the National Football League is going to make you a better player. So, yeah, I love the competition.
Thoughts on Buddha making the Pro Bowl and Joshua being an alternate?
Yeah, happy for those guys. They deserve it. They're huge parts of this team, good football players. So, yeah, it's cool. Good for them.
A random, bigger picture question, but with the league kind of so many offenses evolving to a lot of 13 personnel jumbo usage, are there certain defensive skill sets, like player skill sets, that you see kind of growing in importance now compared to kind of how offenses were playing a couple of years ago?
It depends a little bit on how they're deploying those groups. I would say that you want to have guys that have versatility. Because I think with those teams deploying those big groups, they have pieces that are versatile as well. We saw that last week. You see that within the division, and what I'm talking about is quote unquote the big skill, right? The running backs, the tight ends, that can wear multiple hats. They can be in the backfield, they can be in line blocking, but they can also be split out on routes. They can be getting routes out of the backfield from the core, and so you got to have pieces that can defend all that as well. So, if the league starts to trend into, usage of bigger personnel groups because of those guys having those versatile skill sets, it presents a challenge on defenses, and you have to be able to have those type of pieces yourself and, deploy their certain schemes at the right time in order to combat that.
By the way, Rabbit had it with 11 tackles. How did you assess his return?
Yeah, it was good. Things to improve. You know, he was kind of one of those guys I was referring to when I said I felt like we tackled really good at times. You know, he had some really good tackles in there. He played fast, played violent. You know, he fits our mode of play. I know that. So things that he's going to improve on this week, but did some good things.
Drew, I know JG talked a little bit about it yesterday. How did you think Marvin looked this weekend? Obviously, he's not 100%, but just what he was able to do when he was out there.
Yeah, impressed that he's out there battling. I think that means a lot to him, to his teammates, to me, to the coaching staff. You know, at this point in the NFL season, I don't think a lot of guys feel great, and there's certainly scales to it. And if you're not healthy enough to play, nobody's going to put you out there. But love to see guys fighting through things, competing, and loving the game. And I think you see that from him. Does it limit some of the things he's going to do or some of the reps he's going to get? Yes, maybe at times, but was really just pleased to see him out there and go compete.
Was that kind of the snap split that you wanted to see from him, just getting back in?
Yeah, and every game's going to come up a little different, but there's always going to be a plan based on availability, health, and all the other things in the game plan going into that.
Do you anticipate it still kind of being that kind of balance of having to be aware of his health this week?
I think that's a kind of a day-to-day and week-to-week conversation.
What can you still learn about him when he is limited like that? Like, are you assessing how he plays in the same way and kind of, generating the same takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, there's going to be some good, some bad, some things we want to clean up. I think that's always going to be the case in an individual performance, but not going to take any more or less from that standpoint.
You thought you could have done on that jump ball in the end zone to have a better chance of bringing that in?
He's trying to come back to the ball, a little bit of contact. I think, in the contested catch situations, and knowing his mindset, like any ball that's in the vicinity of his body, he thinks and wants to make the play, and a lot of times has. There also is the reality that you're not going to come down with all of those. And, so I think it's coaching of, hey, where were you? Where were your hands? Where were you on the route? Little things like that. But it was a tough play, and one of those balls that's going to go either way.
Everyone always talks about the jump from year 1 to year 2 between the concussion, even though he didn't miss time for it, the appendicitis, and then the heel. How did that kind of impact his growth from year 1 to year 2?
It's going to limit your production because you're not out there. Like, he didn't miss a game, but he did leave the game in the second quarter. So I think anytime you're missing, a significant number of snaps over the course of the year, that production's going to dip a little bit. And you're just losing some reps and losing some experience and things like that. But I think he does a great job of learning a ton in the meeting room, learning from other guys' reps, staying really engaged even when he's not out there. So I think that growth is still definitely happening.
Thoughts on Trey going to this Pro Bowl?
Well deserved. I mean, we've talked about him a lot for all the right reasons. Just plays the game at such an elite level with so much energy and so much juice. Is so talented at so many different things. So really happy for him. He earned it. He worked his tail off to get there, and always like to see that come to fruition.
What attracts you guys to want to get Corey Kiner, and what has he done in the limited amount of time that he's played?
Yeah, as we talked about in here, throughout the season, the offseason, you're always going to look to add pieces that you think help you win games and guys that can produce in a role or maybe do some things at a high level. So, he fit that bill and brought him in the building to take on a role and to try to produce and come in and compete for a role. And I think you saw that when he had the ball in his hand on Sunday. I think he runs hard. I think he runs violent. You feel him a little bit when guys go to tackle him, the way he lowers his shoulder and finishes some of those runs. And so was pleased with that. Need that to continue.
He had, I think, 6 carries in that game. Do you anticipate kind of getting him involved like that again this week?
I think it can always change based on, the flow of the game and kind of riding the hot hand and who's producing. I thought Michael did a really nice job in the run game, producing some explosive runs, really making some decisive runs and even some dirty runs that maybe were going to be 2 or 3 yard runs, turned them into 4 or 5, 6 yard runs. So it's kind of a flow thing, and everybody who's up on game day is kind of available for different roles.
Michael Wilson's talent didn't just appear in week, whatever it was, 6. What have you learned about him over the course of this year, and kind of especially since he's taken off with Marv kind of being injured, that you didn't know about him because he wasn't getting the looks, the reads weren't going his way?
Yeah, good question. It's hard to say I learned a ton because I think he is so consistent with who he is and how he approaches the game and how he plays. I think the thing you saw when he started to have the production because of the role or the game plan or whatever, kind of the flow of the game, if you will, was kind of the confidence and the attitude come out of him, And I think that's a sign of a talented player who's starting to feel like he's not arrived, probably is not the right word, but like is expecting to make every play and plays with a little bit of an edge and a little bit of an attitude. I think that's been continued to come out as he's made more plays and love that and want that to continue.
What was going through your mind on the touchdown catch?
Well, at first they ruled it incomplete, so I was a little disappointed, but it was third down, so at that point I was kind of, about to look at the tablet, and I think they showed it on the Jumbotron. I'm like, I don't think that hit the ground. Like, we got to challenge that, and that's not, obviously they got much better looks in the box and people who were responsible to make that decision. So was just kind of like peeking at the tablet, peeking back up, waiting to see if they were going to throw the flag. And, when he did and they showed some replays, my elite eye and very objective, I'm sure, thought it was a touchdown, so was just fired up for it. It was a great play in a big situation.
Very objective.
Very objective as they come.
You guys have last year were really good in those 2-minute drive situations. This year haven't been able to find as much success. Is there something you can see that's kind of not going right, specifically in those 2-minute drives?
Yeah, and again, it's it depends on what you need and where you get to. I think of some of those drives a year ago, we needed to get into field goal range. The end of the Miami game, the end of the Charger game, we're able to do some of those things. When you need to get in the end zone, it's going to be a little bit tougher. Like the end of the Jacksonville game, the field goal got us to overtime. Would have loved to get in the end zone. The end of the first half, 21 seconds left, where we have 2 timeouts, got into field goal range. So they're high leverage situations. They're known pass situations. You need chunk plays, typically, especially if you needed to get in the end zone. And then I think the hard thing, and you saw it at some of the end of the games and earlier in the season, is that field shrinks and they know you still have to throw the ball. It can become very difficult. And we've been close a couple of times. A couple of the end of the halves, we've been able to do it. I think of Carolina, Green Bay, to name a couple. Just missed one. Who was it? Jacksonville at the end of the first half, maybe. So we've had some success in that area that I feel really good about. Sometimes, again, in those high leverage situations when the field shrinks, it can get a little hard, and we haven't been able to do it, which is always frustrating.
Very limited opportunity to see him, but how did Hayden Conner look at guard?
Good. Again, you never know when your opportunity is going to come. Jumped in there kind of in a flash. We were able to move the ball. He jumped in the game. I think we gained about 35, 40 yards down into the red zone. Again, weren't quite able to put it in there for a couple different reasons, but, didn't really miss a beat in terms of, job, execution, communication, which was really good to see. And he played a little bit, the game before, and just got to continue to build on that.
How valuable was it just to have John come in there and play center? Just how valuable is he to be a guy that can just move over without us?
It's huge. I mean, again, it looks like you're just going to go from left guard to center, but like the role, the communication, all of the things that go into that job are so different. I was a little nervous there. You never want to see anybody get hurt, but it took long enough. I think he had to cut the thing off his hand so he could snap the ball, and we tried to get some snaps before the first one actually came in the game. And it's something you work on during the week, so you're not panicked about it. But I think he handled it, with really good composure and went in there and kind of like Hayden really didn't miss a beat.
What part of Isaiah's game have you seen the most improvement in since returning to the starting lineup a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit last week about his confidence growing, kind of the expectation of not being happy he made the play, but expecting to make the play, which I think has been great. I think you see that in a lot of the one-on-one matchups. In pass pro, when we're sliding away from him or he's got the 3 technique by himself, I think he's doing a much better job of kind of having a plan, using his hands. His size is going to show, and his length, I think, is showing up a little bit more in pass protection. And I think you see a little bit of that nastiness and the grittiness in the run game through when he's pulling around the edge or he's in a double team of starting to generate some real movement and get guys push past the line of scrimmage, which has been good.
With games, would he practice snapping during practice during individual without the thing on his hand, and then would you put it on, or how did that whole thing work?
He snaps during practice, so I haven't overly paid attention to it. I did know that if it came up in a game, he was going to prefer to have it off. And my guess is on game day, it's a little bit more padded and taped up than it is on a daily practice, but he would probably speak to that better than me.
What stands out with the Bengals?
I think the thing that stood out is kind of their growth and evolution over the course of the season. I know they made a number of roster moves there early in the year and have started playing some young players that I think those guys, kind of like we just talked about with some of our guys, are starting to build some confidence and some continuity in the scheme, which has made them, I think they've improved as the year's gone on. You've seen that throughout the weeks. I think the scheme, especially with the front, is multiple. Same personnel, changing the front, changing where people are aligned to try to keep you off balance. So I think it's going to be a good challenge.